I don't know why, I just love that sound. The more I make these videos and the more confident that I get in front of the camera, I look back at my old videos and I'm kind of embarrassed because I don't think the quality was very good. The message and the content was good, but the execution wasn't very good. I consider this a good thing because it means I'm progressing and I'm getting better with each video as time goes on. And I hope I have this same sort of thought process in 6 to 12 months, because that means I'm improving again. So today's video is going to be, how many megapixels do you actually need? What's the deal with sensor sizes? A kind of beginner's guide to buying a camera. And we're gonna do that while we make some lunch. The first ingredient in any sandwich is obviously the bread. You cannot have a sandwich without bread, otherwise you're just eating a ham salad, or you might as well eat some Nutella out of the jar. There's many different types of bread that we could use in our sandwich. We could have chia butter, we could have focaccia, we could have a baguette, we could have white, rye, wholemeal, multigrain, brown, whatever you name it. Have you been in jail recently? Because you've got bars. There is loads of different types of bread we could use in our sandwich. Lots of these breads have different use cases. Some of them are healthier, some are better for digestion, some have a longer shelf life, and others just bloody scrumptious.
Why does it look so scrumptious?
Now let's break down the sandwich that I'm gonna make today. We've got our bread, we've got our avocado, we've got our pink onion, we've got our grana padano. And just like the bread is the base of our sandwich, the sensor is the base of our digital camera. And just like breads, there are multiple different types of sensors we'll find in cameras. We've got our teeny little ones, and this is what we'll find in a phone or an action camera or something similar to that. Then we've got what's called micro four thirds. This is what you find in all Olympus cameras, most Panasonic cameras like the GH5, and in the brand new Mavic 3. The next step up from here is called APS-C. This is what you'll find in all Fuji X series cameras, cameras like the Canon 90D or the Sony a64-6600 series of cameras. This is more commonly found in a hobbyist camera as it tends to be a little bit more affordable. The next sensor, the most popular on YouTube, the full frame sensor. This is what you find in cameras like the Sony A7, A9, A1 series cameras, or cameras that Canon make like the R3, the R5, and the R6. Then we're rounded out the group by medium format. Think Fuji GFX, Hasselblad, Phase 1, stuff like that. Each of these sensors have a particular use case, just like bread. And it's important to recognize your needs before diving headfirst into a wall of regret. To start the sandwich off, I'm gonna turn this into toast. That was quick. These are some sort of answers to questions that I have all the time when I'm working at the camera store. So, smaller sensors typically mean smaller cameras, and that's lighter and easier to travel with. But it also tends to mean poor or low light performance and lack of depth of field. While the bigger sensor camera tends to be bigger, better in low light, it also tends to be a little bit more expensive, but it does come with the features to match as it is a higher end camera typically. So the bigger the sensor, the better, right?
That's what she said.
Not always.
Maybe, maybe not.
You might be a sports photographer or a birder, wildlife enthusiast. You might actually enjoy a micro four thirds or an APS-C camera because of what's called crop factor. Think of it as extra zoom for your camera. Smaller sensors magnify light differently and they get extra reach out of a lens. So if a lens says it's 200mm on a micro four thirds, it's actually a 400mm if it was on full frame. And APS-C sits halfway in between. So like I said, if you are someone who needs a lot of zoom, you might find that handy because the lenses will be smaller, but they'll get you further. But you also need to be wary of the trade-offs. It might not be as good in low light, it might not have the same depth of field you're used to on a full frame camera. Now let's talk about the avocado.
Free shavakadu!
The avocado is spread directly across the base of our sandwich. You guessed it. The avocado, that's our megapixels. Some of us like our avocado spread thick across the base of a sandwich. Some like it spread across thin. Me? I like it either. Depends what mood I'm in. You see, if our avo is thick across our sandwich, it means we've got more to play with. Just like if we have more megapixels, we've got more room to play with, we can print bigger, just things like that. We'll find our true dimensions are much larger to the image, our file sizes will be bigger, we just get more space to play with things and print to the moon. But if you use your avocado sparingly, it allows other flavors to seep through. Now I know I'm clutching straws a little bit with this analogy, but the lesser the megapixel count, the bigger the megapixel itself. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. The larger the megapixel, the more light that it can naturally gather. And what that means? cleaner low light performance. You guessed it. But it is not always fair to compare apples with apples, or in my case, alphas with alphas. I've got the A7S III and the R4. Your boy's a comedian, I'm here till the end of the video. The R4 has over 5 times the amount of pixels than the A7S III does. But what that means is the A7S III has pixels that are over 5 times the size of the ones on the A7 R4. So you can start to see this little tangled web of trade-offs we're about to find ourselves in. Some like it thick, some like it thin.
That's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said.
I'm talking about avocados. Come on, let's get out. It's important to realize these two cameras are made for 2 very different reasons. This is a low light monster, very good video camera. This one, well, this is made for the photographer to give ultimate freedom, high resolution images that person can print to the absolute moon. And yes, I said resolution, not resolution. I'm gonna keep it, let's play on. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish avoing up these things. You should probably look when you're cutting with a knife, because I'm lucky I haven't cut myself. So now we've got our bread and our base sorted. Just think, everything with sensor size is completely relative. If we have a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor and 20 megapixel full frame sensor, well, the full frame megapixels are actually twice as big because the sensor is twice as big. So just think about these trade-offs when choosing your camera. Next up, the red onion. It's simple, it's effective, and it adds a little bit of flavor. In this step, you can be as plain or as sophisticated and fancy as you want. This is the bells and whistles of the camera. This is all the different features we're gonna find inside. Sometimes I'll put my red onion in, some almonds, some crushed almonds, some pecans, some cashews, a little dash of salt. Just depends how fancy you wanna get. If you're willing to pay for the camera, you can get all those bells and whistles. You can't get pecan nuts in your box, but
That's what she said. No.
this is your fast focusing, your high frames per second, your 4K, your 8K video, your slow motion, all those sort of features. That's the pecan nuts, that's the red onion, that is the salt on top. But if you want a sandwich with all these ingredients, your sandwich is gonna cost more than if you just had red onion, if you can't see where I'm going with this. So when you walk into the camera store, make sure you have a clear focus in mind of what you want to use this camera for and what you require in return for the money you're about to spend. Because at the end of the day, there is no point spending all this money on some nice exotic nuts and then just letting them sit on a shelf somewhere. If I was gonna make you a avocado sandwich, you know what sort of nuts I'd put on there?
These nuts.
Got it! Next up, what does everyone like and it rhymes with steez?
These nuts.
It's cheese, dick. Not cheese dick, it's cheese. Dick. It is the grana padana. God gave us Italy, and Italy gave us Mrs. Padana, and she gave us the grana. God bless her soul. The grana is the piece de la resistance. It's the creme de la creme. And if you're Aussie, it's the shit. But not everyone needs a padano. The padano is not cheap. It is in fact quite expensive. Just like lenses. You have one piece of this, you'll be seeing clearly. And that's why I use grana padano as the lens metaphor. You're welcome. Could you imagine if I had affiliate marketing for Italian cheeses and cold meats? Man, I would buy from that. The local Italian deli is just like, just give them 5% of every grana padano sale. Next thing is cannolis and capicola. The bigger the sensor, the more glass that's required in the lens to cover that sensor. And if you want a fast lens, a 1.2, a 2.8, something in there, it's gonna set you back a bit of money if you're on a full frame camera. So let's look at 2 types of cameras that are pretty popular in the micro four thirds and the full frame world. The Panasonic GH5 or the Olympus EM1 Mark III. If you were to put a 24 to 70 2.8 equivalent on there, let's look at the Panasonic 12 to 35. And then you take yourself the Sony a7 IV and you put a 24 to 70 G Master on there. The Sony's gonna be a hell of a lot heavier, but it's also gonna be almost double the price for that same setup when we're talking about the lenses. I'm not an exact mathematician, but essentially twice the size of the sensor means double the amount of glass, double the money, etc. And that's not even talking about Canon. You talk to Canon and their Canon prices, shit gets expensive. Some people like craft singles. I like grana padano. That is my shit. And then when you're done, you put yourself a little bit of balsamic glaze, or in this case today, we're gonna use a bit of Because Australian Bush Honey. And this is your Lightroom edit. This is your Final Cut edit. This is your secret sauce, your little something, a little bit of spice.
Let me add a little bit of spice. too bad.
That is what the honey is. My goodness, it is delicious. If anyone out there is laughing, doesn't think this is delicious, make it and then judge me. It's so good. Real talk, I'm about to smash this. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about expectations, reality, and ecosystems. That's pretty important to consider. Wish me luck. Don't need it, already got it. I'm not gonna lie, this was not my recipe. Rosie introduced me to it, as most things that I eat. So damn good.
A few moments later.
So one key thing people don't think about when they are buying their camera is that most cameras that are not entry level do not come with a lens. You will need to buy that lens separately. So your body, that might be $2,000, but your lens, that's where you get all the sharpness and all the character in your image. You might have heard people say, I'd rather the worst camera with the best lens possible than the best camera with the worst lens possible. And it's completely true. Lenses can be way more important to get the job done than the camera itself. And therefore lenses are a much better investment of your money than the body. Camera manufacturers release new versions of cameras every 2 to 3 years. And most working people that I know, they have the camera, they have all their lenses. New camera comes out, they sell theirs, they bring the new camera in. But those lenses, they've been around since the start. Camera companies will update lenses and have version 2, version 3, but for the most part, the lenses that are of a higher quality, so an L series or a G Master, depending on what brand you shoot with, they will retain their value much, much better, and their shelf life, 7, 8, sometimes 10 years. And that's why we see lots of guys using lenses from 30 odd years ago, because when they started out, they invested good money into good glass, and that glass is still relevant today. And if you're in filmmaking, you can also go down the rabbit hole of vintage lenses and stuff like that. I've got a Helios on the way from Rosie for Christmas. Very excited about that. But glass is what's going to give you the character and the look to your image. Invest in glass, then invest in the body. So it's important to acknowledge when you go into a camera store and you go, I want that camera, but I want that lens, that 24 to 72.8. That lens could cost more than that camera. If you're not prepared for that, it's gonna be a $2,000 or $3,000 surprise. It's also equally as important to be real with yourself and be real with who you are and what your needs actually are. If you're used to shooting all of your photos on a phone and image quality isn't the most important thing to you, and you really care about making memories, then go for something with a smaller sensor. Might not be a bad thing for you. It's gonna save you a boatload of cash for one. I'm on a boat! And second, it is gonna be smaller, it is gonna be lighter. And what that means, you're actually gonna take it out and use it. There's 0 point spending 10 grand on an awesome setup and then it sits in a camera bag in the cupboard doing sweet FA. Now, if you have a business, you're looking to build a business, or it's a serious hobby and you intend to use all the features that you're actually paying for in the higher end model, then by all means, go ahead and send it. And if you got cash to burn, send it as well.
You guys silly? I'm still gonna send it.
Before you send it and buy anything cheap or expensive, you need to think about what ecosystem are you getting yourself into. Cameras are just like phones. You've got Apple, you've got your Samsung, etc. Apple Watch, Apple phone, iPad, iMac, all that stuff just works seamlessly together. It's kind of the same thing, but it's also a necessity. Sony use Sony lenses, Canon use Canon lenses. They've all got different mounts. When I swapped from Canon over to Sony made the most sense to me. The most lenses available for what I wanted to do, and the camera just fitted my needs. It's still my opinion that Sony personally suits me best, but other people might benefit from other systems. For instance, right now in Australia, if you bought a Canon R6, a 15 to 35, 24 to 70, 70 to 200 RF 2.8s, you'd be spending $17,000. If you bought a Sony a7 IV and the same lens setup, you'd be spending $13,000. You would have another $4,000 to do whatever the hell you wanted with. Save it, buy another lens, buy a second body. So you have to realize when you're buying into an ecosystem, you do take the flaws and the pros that come with that. Some are more expensive and some have better features for different type of users. Some are more video centric, some are more photo centric. So it's really important to look at your needs and look at your budget and kind of weigh the two up and see where you fall. Some people suit best to Sony, some people suit best to Olympus. Every single brand out there has a customer and you just need to work out what brand suits you, your budget, your needs, etc. After this, if you still don't know where you fall, go into the store, talk to someone and see what they think you should be getting. Far too often, I see people coming and trying to buy way too much for what they need or way too little, and you don't want to fall into either one of those categories. I didn't want this video to be a tell you what you should buy because everyone's got their own brand loyalties and like I've got a lot of money tied up in Sony, so I don't want to come across as biased in any way. I wanted this video more to kind of provoke your thoughts and go, maybe I don't need those features, or perhaps I need to save a little bit more money before I jump into this because in return for my money, I expect 4K, 120, blah, blah. You kind of need to have those ducks in a line before you go sending it. So I really want this video to kind of help prompt those questions and steer you in the right direction rather than tell you what you should buy. I hope this video did do that, and if it did, please give it a big fat thumbs up. That stuff's super helpful in growing this channel. We just crossed 2,000 subscribers recently, so if you're not one of them, join the community below, hit the subscribe button. I am very appreciative of all of you guys on this journey. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I've got about 10 more on the go. Kind of trying to work out how I'm going to get through them all, but I'm excited. It's good times ahead. Today's music suggestions. In living memory of the Grana Padana, we're going to listen to some Richard Cheese today. If you don't know who it is, look it up. If you do, you'll have a good time. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye. The light went out. Of course the bloody light went out. Do you know what? I reckon I can mask that section out. Yeah. Anytime I put avo on a sandwich and I get a bit bruised avo on there, I just put some good avo over the top, forget the bruised bits there. Little life hack for you. Fake it till you make it. Or cameras like the Canon R4. No, just kidding, it's one thing they don't do.